Have you ever noticed something strange about an entire generation being told they were extraordinary, only to grow up and realize the life they were promised feels almost impossible to reach? This is the reality many millennials face today. Millennials, people born roughly between 1981 and 1996, grew up hearing that they could achieve anything if they worked hard enough. They were encouraged to aim high, pursue education, and believe that effort would naturally lead to success. But when many of them entered adulthood, they walked straight into one of the worst economic downturns in modern history. In fact, research from the Pew Research Center showed that millennials became the first generation in modern American history expected to be financially worse off than their parents. This creates a strange psychological conflict. People who were raised to believe they were capable of achieving anything, yet constantly feel like they are falling behind. Psychology has a term for this uncomfortable mental tension: cognitive dissonance. It happens when two beliefs clash with each other. On one side, millennials were taught that hard work guarantees success. On the other side, their real-world experiences often tell a very different story. Psychologist Jean Twenge studied this phenomenon extensively and even wrote a book called Generation Me. Her research found something fascinating. Millennials tend to score higher on measures of narcissism compared to earlier generations, but they also report higher levels of anxiety and depression. This creates a paradox where people may feel pressure to see themselves as exceptional while simultaneously struggling with deep feelings of insecurity and uncertainty. To understand why, we need to look at how millennials were raised. During the 1980s and 1990s, parenting trends heavily emphasized boosting children's self-esteem. Many kids grew up with highly involved helicopter parents, constant encouragement, and a culture where everyone received recognition simply for participating. These ideas were not harmful in intention. They were based on the psychological knowledge available at the time and were meant to build confident, capable adults. But then, adulthood arrived during a completely different reality. When the global financial crisis hit in 2008, many millennials were graduating college or just beginning their careers. The job market had changed dramatically, housing costs began rising rapidly, and the traditional career path many had been promised started disappearing. At the same time, something else happened that shaped this generation in a unique way. Social media exploded. Facebook launched in 2004, and Instagram followed in 2010. Millennials were the first generation learning how to become adults while also learning how to present their lives online. Psychologist Tim Kasser's research on materialism and well-being shows that when people begin tying their self-worth to external validation, such as likes, followers, and online approval, their mental health often declines. Social media essentially turns life into a constant performance where people feel like they are always being evaluated. Another major shift involves traditional life milestones. Previous generations often measured adulthood through markers like stable careers, home ownership, marriage, and having children. Surveys show that many millennials still want these things, but the economic barriers have become significantly higher. As a result, many people in their 30s and even 40s report feeling as if their real life has not fully begun yet. This prolonged uncertainty can have real psychological effects. Researchers describe a concept known as allostatic load, which refers to the stress placed on the body when it remains in a constant state of adaptation and pressure. In simple terms, it's like your brain is always preparing for stability that never quite arrives. Another psychological factor is something called schema disruption. Humans naturally build mental models about how the world works. For many millennials, the model they were given was simple: study hard, get a degree, find a stable career, and gradually build a secure life. But when they followed those steps, they often encountered a completely different system. College became dramatically more expensive. Entry-level jobs started demanding years of experience, and many workers entered a gig economy where stable benefits and long-term job security were no longer guaranteed. When a belief system about the world breaks down on such a large scale, it doesn't just create frustration, it changes how people view institutions, authority, and the future itself. This may explain why millennials are often described as both idealistic and deeply skeptical at the same time. There is also frequent criticism about millennials changing jobs frequently and lacking loyalty to employers. But when you look closely, the workplace itself has changed. Pensions have largely disappeared, long-term job security has declined, and layoffs have become a normal business strategy. Many millennials simply adapted to a system where loyalty is no longer consistently rewarded. Another defining trait of this generation is education and diversity. Millennials are among the most educated generations in history and grew up during the rapid expansion of the internet. Having access to vast amounts of information encourages questioning and critical thinking. However, questioning systems that were rarely challenged before can sometimes lead to being labeled as entitled or difficult. In reality, it may simply reflect a generation that has grown accustomed to seeing multiple perspectives and narratives. At the same time, millennials have played a major role in changing how society talks about mental health. Therapy, anxiety, and depression are discussed far more openly than they were in previous decades. The stigma surrounding mental health has begun to fade in many communities. But this openness comes with another layer of complexity. Millennials are having these conversations while facing high student debt, rising housing costs, economic uncertainty, and a rapidly changing job market. And then there is the future itself. Millennials are also the generation that must confront large-scale global challenges such as climate change, while often feeling they lack the institutional power to address them fully. This has led to what psychologists now call climate anxiety, a growing sense of worry and helplessness about the long-term future of the planet. When you look at all these factors together, high expectations, economic instability, social media pressure, delayed milestones, and global uncertainty, the psychological profile of millennials begins to make more sense. They are not simply anxious or entitled, as stereotypes often suggest. They are responding in very human ways to a world that changed dramatically between the promises they were given and the reality they inherited. And when the map you were given no longer matches the territory you're walking through, confusion and stress are natural responses. Understanding this generational experience helps explain not only the struggles millennials face, but also the resilience they continue to develop while navigating an unpredictable world.